you, fellas. Yep, Dodge has had an increase in its truck family. A new addition. Completely new. Of course, you'll want to know what makes this model different from the others, just like Art and Pat did when they saw one for the first time the other day.
Holy cats, what in the world is that? It says Dodge, but... Hey, Pat, look at what Ralph's driving in.
Oh, nuts, another snub-nosed job. Wonder what's wrong with... Hey, wait a minute, Art, that's something new. Got a Dodge name on the front, but I've never seen anything like that with a Dodge name on it.
You're right, Pat. You've never seen anything like this with anybody's name on it before. It's brand new. It's the Dodge Ralph van.
You mean we've got one of those door-to-door delivery trucks?
Yes, but this van has all the features delivery men all over the country have been looking for.
Yep, it's brand new, all right. And wait till you fellas get a look at some of its new mechanical features.
The boss said we could have this job today to learn about it. So, you fellas go ahead and do whatever you want to, but be sure you come up with the right answers. Take over and tell them about it, will you, Tack?
Sure thing, Ralph. Step right in, fellas, and look around.
Gosh, look at that low floor. You sure don't have to climb a ladder to get into this job.
There's a lot of room in here, too, but what I want to know is, where did they hide the engine?
Yeah, and wherever it is, I'll bet a fellow has to be a contortionist to get at it. The fellows who design new jobs sure don't have any mercy on the poor mechanics who have to work on them.
Good gosh, there you go, always expecting the worst. Why don't you take a look at the truck before you begin to gripe about it?
Tech's right, Art. Maybe it won't be so tough to work on this job. They haven't built one yet that I can't unbutton.
If you'd get up off of your if you'd stand up, Art, you'd find the engine under that cover you're sitting on.
Ah, there she is. Looks like the standard one-ton truck engine.
Yep, that's just what it is, Pat.
Yeah, and all tucked in like a baby in a crib. What do? Hang by your heels while you adjust the valve tappets?
Nope, looks to me like this side panel comes off, and you reach in from under the fender to adjust the tappets. Right, Tech?
That's it, Pat.
Guess I can't complain about that. Say, where do you time the ignition?
Just remove this plug and stick a timing gauge in the hole. It works like this. This gauge measures piston travel in thousandths of an inch.
I know that method. You turn the engine over with a hand crank to set the piston 2/1000ths of an inch after top center.
Wait a minute, fellas. Be sure you pull the high-tension wire out of the coil before you turn the engine over, so the engine won't fire.
That's right. Then you turn the key on and adjust the distributor until the points just break.
Right, Pat. That's how you set the ignition timing. It's all in your reference book. And so is the dope on using the gauge for checking valve timing, too.
Looks like there's room to pull that head in case you had a valve grinding job.
Yeah, and if you have to get inside, you can just pull the oil pan like you would on any other job. Then you can replace the pistons, rings, or bearings without removing the engine. Now let's go around in front. Just turn that handle and I'll show you where you feed this route band. Extensions bring the dipstick and the oil filler pipe out where you can reach them easily.
Sure can. And look how easy it is to get at the electric windshield wiper motors and the heater and defroster motors.
That's pretty handy, all right, but look, suppose I had to pull the engine. I got an idea you'll have trouble getting it out of the pocket.
Well, like we said before, you don't have to pull it for regular service operations. But if you do want to remove it, you'll find it's easier than it looks. Think you can figure it out, Pat?
Well, first you'd have to pull this lower grill panel and the radiator. Then I guess, we'd unhitch the spaghetti and pull her out.
Not so fast. With that low-slung engine, we'll have to pull the bumper off, too, or else we'll tear off the oil pan.
Well, look who's getting steamed up about this job now. Let me show you something else, Art. This is called a firewall. It acts as an insulator to keep the heat of the engine away from the gas tank.
You have to take that out, too, before you pull the engine?
No. Just be careful you don't get the engine hung up on it.
Hey, this front cross member is made in 2 sections.
Right, Art. It's made that way so you can pull the engine out the front. But The gas line is on top of the cross member, and the brake line runs behind it. So you got to remove those lines before you start pulling the engine out. Those lines are made so you can take out just the part that goes across that removable section of the cross member.
Say, that's all right. Just like pulling a drawer out of a desk.
We'd better see how much of a job it is to drop the transmission before you pull that drawer, son.
I suppose you have to remove this engine housing rear panel and the cover over the transmission.
Yep. And while you're working here, remember, some of these vans will come through with fluid drive.
You mean to tell me you can get fluid drive on a truck?
You sure can. And what's more, there's 2 different types of transmissions available. The heavier model van uses a 4-speed transmission instead of this 3-speed job. And if you get fluid drive on this lighter chassis, you can get the 4-speed transmission if you want it.
Say, with the engine off to one side, the clutch must be operated by remote control.
That's right, Pat. It's operated by a special linkage arrangement. And that's pretty important as far as service of the truck is concerned. And that linkage arrangement is the same on fluid drive as it is on conventional drive. Just be sure you get it adjusted right if you ever have to work on it.
That takes care of the transmission, Tech. Universal joints are standard, so now...
Wait a minute. Look at this left engine mount. They don't make a wrench that'll reach in there.
No, but they thought of another way to get at it. Come over here. Now, take this floor plate and side panel off. Then you can get at the mounting easy.
Well, I guess somebody did think of us mechanics on that point, Art. Now, guess we unhitch the exhaust pipe at the manifold, right, Tech?
You'll have to go further than that, Pat. The exhaust pipe has to come completely off, because otherwise the clutch housing will snag it.
Okay, I'll handle the exhaust pipe and the transmission. You take care of the wiring and controls, Art.
And I'll get somebody to turn the record over, and then we'll all be busy.
Now we're getting to something I've been saving for you, Tech, old pal. How are you going to lift this engine to get it out? Drop a chain hoist through the roof?
Art, my friend, you still don't think the designers made it easy for you, huh? Tell me, Pat, how would you get the engine out?
Well, let's see. We won't have to lift it much with that section of the cross member coming out with the engine. Let's try this. Bring that roller jack over here, Art, and stick it under the engine, while I attach a lifting eye to the cylinder head between number 3 and 4 cylinders for the chain hoist.
Roll the jack under the oil pan, Art. The floating power mounting will buckle if you jack up under the cross member. And Pat, run the chain through the channel of the grill hinge. No use messing up the body of your first van.
I see what you mean. Okay, now snake her forward using the jack and the chain both, Art. I'll keep most of the weight on the chain so you won't bust through the oil pan.
Guide that engine out carefully, Art, so the fuel pump bowl don't bump against the frame.
Watch that starter pedal, too. Don't let it snag on the firewall.
Okay, but I ought to keep the rear motor supports from sliding off the rails, too.
Easy does it. Now.
Hold it a minute. The chain's hanging almost straight up and down. So let's just roll the van away from the engine.
That's using the old bean, Art.
Hooray! Nice going, boys. Well, that wasn't so tough, was it? And now that you've got the engine out, I don't mind telling you. The whole procedure for doing this job is right here in the reference book. Now, let's get this engine back in. And don't forget to bleed those brakes, Art, before you button this job up for the road test.
Right. As soon as we get through here, let's see what else is new about this route van. Let's look at the underside, Tech. With that low floor, I'll bet they got parts dragging on the ground.
Put her on the hoist, Art, and I'll show you some smart engineering. What do you see that's different, Art?
Plenty. But say, look at the steering hookup. There are 2 drag links between the steering gear arm and the knuckle arm.
I think I know why they did that, Art. You see, in order to keep the driver's compartment low and still keep the front axle back where it belongs, they had to move all the steering mechanism up front here. Then, They fixed up this system to give the steering leverage you need.
Right, Pat. Here's the way it works. A drag link runs forward from the steering gear arm and hooks up to a steering idler arm. Another drag link runs back to the steering knuckle arm.
Any tricks to adjusting toe-in, Tech?
Nope, just like any other job with a single tie rod.
Just loosen the tie rod ends and turn the tie rod, hey, Tech?
That's right for the lighter model, Art. The tie rod on the heavier job is a little different. This tie rod turns up at the ends to allow clearance under the front springs. So, when you adjust toe-in on the heavier model, you have to disconnect one end at the knuckle arm and turn the ball end on the rod.
I get it.
Let's get back to the rear end. I got faith in you, Tech, but I think that rear axle must be on rollers.
That's because you're thinking of ordinary rear axles, Pat. But this rear suspension is entirely different. In fact, it's so different that I'm coming back real soon to give you the whole story. But right now, let's take a quick look so you'll get a general idea how it works.
Well, I can see the differential is mounted right on the frame. That's to give the van a low floor, I suppose.
Sure, and look at this universal joint hookup to the rear wheels. I never saw anything like that before.
Let me tell you how that works. There are two short shafts, one in each side of the differential. The two universal joints are connected to those shafts. Then, the outer universal joints connect to stub shafts in the rear wheel spindles. That arrangement takes the place of the regular axle shaft. Then, a driving flange connects the shaft to the wheel.
And that's what makes the wheels go round, eh?
That's all there is to driving them, my friend. But I want you to notice this I-beam. That's what supports the wheels and carries the weight of the van.
How's it coming, fellas?
I think we've learned a lot about this job, Ralph.
Yeah, except the rear wheel suspension and the adjustment of the clutch linkage. But Tech's going to give us those stories later.
I'm glad you've given the boys the dope, Tech, because by learning the new features that make this van the best in its field, you fellas will deliver the best service for the new Dodge Route van.